Forgot to. We're here, everybody, for another episode of Create a World. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. I think today's going to be impactful. We're going to start talking about what it is to stand in your merit. And I don't mean your value. Everyone is intrinsically valuable. So that's not in question. But what is it to stand in our merit, in our unique contribution, our unique and essential aspect of creation that we are? And what is the journey that can be? There seems to be up in the world rather a lot these days. A lot is falling away that once would have kept people in certain lanes, in certain ways of being, conventions, traditions, social norms, whatever they are. And a lot's falling away. And there still are a lot of places in the world where that's either chosen for the value that is, or imposed on others, and they have yet to be able to be standing in their merit. So we have a lot of powerful women here with us today who've had a lot of insight into this journey, a lot of awareness because of their own journeys. So I want to turn it over, starting with Tantra, to start having that conversation with you today.
Hi, we're also having the conversation among ourselves. This actually all came out of our meeting to look and see what the next 7 weeks were going to be about. At the time we were looking at embodiment, but our project with ourselves is what we coined build your own merit. And it was startling what we ran into. And I'm going to turn it over to Victoria, because Victoria's the one that flipped the switch on over into why we're doing this today. In a question she asked me, and before we leave today, I want to tell you a story of the jewelry I bought from a man named Bruce, who's Hemez, from the Hemez and Zuni tribe. But I think there'll be a lovely end to our conversation. So I'll turn it over to Victoria now.
Hi, everyone. So Tantra, it's so startling to me, the profoundness of standing in our own merit, that I cannot even recall the question that brought this forward. And I think that is amazing, that I can't pull it forward. So if you can bring that forward to
I will.
me.
But it's great you said that, because that's how fast it goes down. That's how fast it goes back in the back of our head, and we can't remember it. And what you were talking about is the sharing publicly about people that are in your family, and because we were talking about stories and how important it is to live as people with stories. Not stories that are based in trauma recovery, although it is sometimes trauma recovering, but more the stories that are part of our commitment to life, and part of what us before, whether you all know it or not, before we got on the call, we're in sort of a raw and vulnerable moment, because it's a very different thing to talk about something than to live it. And our intent on Create a World is to be with you in such a way that we can share with you what we're living. Any clues in that, Victoria?
I definitely registered the emotion of not remembering in the mental mind that it's so much more than the mental mind of it. And as a person living in a family system, and finding, looking exploring how do I stand in my own merit in a family, and the family of origin, the family that I have connected to through my partner, and the family of community that I am exploring beyond as I've recently moved to explore what it is to be in a community that I feel this deep, compassionate connection to how do I live my authentic story now in this new configuration that I've created and that my spouse and I are creating, and what it looks like for me now to step into a new version, a more authentic, a more powerful connection. And how in the past I have set aside the capacity that I hold within myself on behalf of others, and realizing now that it may not necessarily have been on behalf of others that I set aside the way I stand in my own merit. So I'm really paying attention to not setting myself aside as I move forward, and that for me in this moment is, what will that look like? I have no clue particularly, except I know that I'm moving with each moment to see what rises, to see what I'm present to, and how to work with it. So,
But you're moving with each moment in a particular way. You're not moving with each, according to what I'm hearing you say, you're not moving unconsciously or just driven by the roles or what's in front of you. I'm hearing you say you're propelled by what is my authentic self, and expressing. I loved how you said it, and it's already escaped me. The expressing what you came here to be, your merit, on behalf of that, which includes others and your beloveds, but not necessarily shaped towards something else. Can you say anything else about what it's like to live each moment with those filters or energies propelling you, shaping how you are with the present moment?
Yeah, it's a body biological event, as Tundra has said before. It's such a body event for me, that even as I talk to you guys now, my body informs me through the sensory experience. What's the next word I might say, or what's the feeling that's coming up? And I was thinking I met a woman at the dog park, and she's sharing her story of coming to Albuquerque. And she's engaged and interested in me, and then starts offering me opportunities for jobs. And I said, oh, I will ponder that. In the past, I might have said, oh, I'll check that out. I'm sitting with the possibilities in a new way, not automatically making mental mind decisions about yes or no. Just saying, let me just be open to what comes forward. And that at this moment in life, standing in my own merit is choosing what brings me life, what brings me forward in the world. If there's a sentient ping for me, a register of yes, that's it, I'll feel it in my body and I'll move towards it. That, as you said, what propels me, it will just be that knowing, that feeling that says, investigate further. And if it's not really strong and clear, then I'll say thank you and I'll ponder that possibility until I know exactly what it is I'm moving towards. Does that
Wow.
kind of help?
It does, and I really have more questions than I can ask now, because yours and my system of navigating, shall we call it,
Uh-huh.
are really different.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna set those aside for another time. But yes, that really gives me a excellent flavor of you. Gosh, thank you.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate that. I really appreciate that.
The other thing I heard and what Victoria said is the gift of walking with the unknown when we don't know what futures are rising and we don't know how our authentic relationship with life will be expressed. And I think in the past we would have risen to the roles we played. And, you know, it's interesting, my grandmother was valedictorian of her senior class and not allowed to go to college because she was a woman. My mother was a middle child of her family. And when her father died at 16, no one even thought about the fact that she would go to work to support the family so that her brother could join the Air Force and her sister could go to school and get educated. I'm 76 years old or 75, I can't remember. And so I've really led, in a way, a privileged life compared to them, because I could go to school and I could even have my own business, which obviously I've had for 57 years. But at the very same time, once I began to become a public person with my children and my family, there was this invisible world I didn't know was a source of constraint, nor do I think anyone else did. I don't think there's blame here. I think it's the water we're swimming in. And yesterday I'm writing a book here and with someone, and it's so fascinating because her children don't think anything about their father being gone, even up to 2 weeks, but their mother mustn't be gone. And yet these children aren't socially indoctrinated. They go to a very progressive school. So I could really see how it is in the water we're swimming in. And how do you be meta devoted? You know, how do you be meta devoted to family, to yourself, to your community, and to your world? And yet the one thing they say about women is that we multitask much better than men do. And we do. Who else?
Yeah, so I just want to presence that we are all operating under a tremendous amount of programming because of the water that we swim in. And you know, some of us in the field of Tantramat have been doing some more deep work about, you know, looking at that programming and exploring what our mind does to us and ways that it tries to get in our way. And we tend to then blame ourselves when we experience friction or disconnection or struggle to stand in our own merit, to voice what we have to voice, as if somehow there's something deficient in us that's keeping us from doing those things. And again, in reality, because of this water that we're swimming in, there are all these factors that are upon us that we are not always consciously aware of. And I think a lot about indigenous tribes and the way they bring up children. And they have this really powerful way of listening to and being with and stewarding the person that that child is born as, right? Because I mean, we're born as people. We're not a blank slate. And so in indigenous culture, I mean, you know, in some even they wait to name the child until a name is present rather than imposing, right? And in a lot of our Western cultures, it's all about imposing restrictions from very, very early on. And, you know, and if you are a woman, if you are a person of color, if you are somebody who is transgender or somebody who is on the LGBTQ spectrum, somebody who is not Christian, right? It takes a lot to be willing in those conditions to stand in your own merit, because you've got even more standing you have to do when you come from a less privileged place. And so, you know, one of the reasons that we want to be open with you about our stories is that we want you to know that we're not here having this conversation because we feel like we've arrived. We're here having this conversation because we are on the journey with you. And I've had some things happen this week that have really smacked into my face about some theater work that I want to do next. And the voices in my head have been yakking at me, all with the goal of stopping me from moving forward. And so it's been it's been moment to moment conversation with myself to say, okay, well, thank you for your feedback, but I'm going to put that over there. And actually, yes, okay, I hear that you are telling me that I'm not good enough to do this and I'm not good enough to do that, but you know what? I'm still going to give it a try. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to do the best I can, and when I know better, I'll do better, like Maya Angelou says. But it's this takes courage and stamina, strength, and capacity, phrases that we use in the field of Tantra Mat. And it's despite the fact that it's a primary focus of a human life, these are not generally things that we're taught in school. So all of us are really in a major self-discovery about what it is to be willing to be authentic in a world that isn't necessarily programmed for that.
Janice, it does take courage. It does take courage to keep moving forward, like I would call it tacking in the wind, towards expressing and living as who you know yourself to be. But what had you grab hold of that courage? What allows that? What has you grab on and say, that's the way I'm going, as opposed to folding into, for example, a teacher was one of basically two jobs a woman could have for a very long time. And you could easily just be a teacher inside a certain framework, but you're using it differently. It's your self-expression. But can you say more about that? Of what is you grab onto that courage?
Deb, I think it's a combination of joy and pain. And what I mean by that is, because I actually, I tried when I was in my 30s, I got divorced, and I decided as part of that part of the reason I'd gotten divorced was that I was too much, and I needed to learn to not be too much. So I tried to. I went into it was almost, I'm an actor too, so almost like an acting challenge for me to try to be this this more vanilla person, and it was so awful. It was so dissonant, that I was like, oh, I can't, it's as hard as it is to be authentic, it's worse to be inauthentic. And then also to have been fortunate enough to have had experiences in my life that have really connected me with my joy. Opportunities to perform, opportunities to create new systems and new programs. And the, even though the experiences have sometimes been momentary, the way in which that lights me up, and just the rush of bliss that I feel is just undeniable. And so, I guess maybe it's almost like a runner's high. I went to high school with a young woman who she had to run an hour every day. Like she could not not run the hour every day. It was what she needed to be alive. And so she would get herself up at 5 a.m, and right, means which never wasn't necessarily pleasant, but in service of being able to get to the place of feeling so great after a run. And so for me, it's recognizing that while there is, can be struggle and unpleasantness, on the way to living who you're designed to be, that the joy from even momentary opportunities to be that is worth it. And for me anyway, outweighs, the unpleasantness. And again, that the pain I have experienced when I tried to be something other than who I was so intense that it's like, if you put your hand on a hot stove, you pull your hand off so you don't keep it, right? So it's like, I think that pain was so intense that it was a way of saying to me, do not continue walking on this path.
Yeah. Thank you. Who else? I'd like to hear from other people as well. Please.
It seems that we do this, or at least in my experience, is that this shifting of where we are feeling our merit or what is the next step happens often in life. And we talked a little bit about the different roles that you play throughout your life. And some of it, yes, is programmed in society. And we grew up thinking, yes, you're going to marry. Yes, you're going to have children. And the choice of career, like I had a choice of career, just like Tantra said, both my grandmothers had to quit school in 8th grade. One went to work on the family farm. That was what the woman was supposed to do. And she was happy as a clam because she didn't like school. So the other one was a really smart woman, and she went to work in a factory because, of course, you have to support the family. And she got pregnant at 15 and married and ended up having 9 kids, 5 of which I think made it to adulthood. So it was a different world that they lived in. I think their opportunities were different. And each of them, and I look at the lives of the grandmothers and I say they really were, in how they lived within the confines of their society and the class that they were in and all of that, but they were uniquely them. You know, like the grandmother who was really happy not to have to go to school anymore, because what I can identify now as learning issues, disability issues that have been passed down in future generations. She went on to found a library in the pioneer town that she lived in. She made sure that a town that was full of saloons and prostitutes had a library for the children, so that there was something of true value for them. She also founded an ice cream parlor so that anybody who didn't drink could have a place to enjoy themselves. So there it was, within the confines of living in rural Idaho and an 8th grade education, she did stand in her own merit. And I think that's what I often, when we love our grandparents, it is that which is uniquely them, which shines forth for us. And if they live it, no matter how they've lived it, or we live it within the confines of our economics, our social class, it still shines through. And I think that sometimes when we say a phrase like build your own merit, it sometimes, again, comes with a historic baggage of, well, if that should mean that I do well financially, right? That the world sees me as me. But that's not actually what it is. It's more like what Janice was talking about. It's an inside thing, and it's an alignment thing, and it's living. And we went to visit the town that my grandmother lived in Idaho, in the panhandle of Idaho. And you know, there's one picture of one woman from the 1930s sitting in the library glass case, and it's my grandmother. They don't know her name. They don't know exactly what she did, but her picture is there. And when we went and visited it, it was one of those things where the energy of her dedication is present, and they know that. This was a woman who was dedicated enough to start the library in this town. And I tell you, this is a spit town. You can close your eyes and you're through that town, even today. And but it seems so significant to me to see her picture there. Even though they didn't know the story, they honored the commitment, because her commitment was very similar to theirs. So the women who were now in that library, and I think this was in the middle of 2015 or 16, we took Mom back for a visit to her stomping grounds of her youth. That meant a lot to me. And it meant a lot, I think, to the people there. And if I was a librarian there, I'd know 70 years ago, somebody cared enough about books for our kids that they founded this library, or they were part of the founding of the library. And that would stimulate me, just sort of like what Janice says and Victoria says, is to step out and say what matters to me. What is something that I am willing to say, no, I'm putting myself out here for this. This is important. For me, that's happened a number of times in my lifetime, and it's all different careers. You know, it's sort of like, whoa, another role. And it all involved a little bit of giving up the old, giving up the idea. Like when my daughter started college, I started massage school. My daughter thought she'd have a heart attack. Okay. Because her idea of what Mom was going to do for the 4 years she was in college was to keep a job that paid well so that it would make sure that she got through college. Okay. And what I was really clear about was that my people were in that massage school and in the Energy Hill school I went to. So I went from being a stand-up trainer in the corporate world. So you got the suit, right? You get the suit, and you get a little bow tie. We used to wear. And I decided that my people were there. And it worked out. But sometimes you have to put your foot over the edge, just like Janice said. And it isn't, and just like Victoria said, you got to wait to see what the signs are. Sometimes you got to wait. And sometimes in your gut, it says, no, that's what you need to be doing. And if you don't, and I'll have to agree, if you try and go the wrong way, they go like, no, dear, you're not doing that. Janice talked about it as being very painful. I have often felt it like I was getting a lot of pressure that was just pushing me in the direction that I wanted to take. So that was a big, huge move. And I spent the next 15 years in that field and doing that. And then there was another shift. And another shift to go to the state of Hawaii, and another shift to come, So I think it's a continual process. And I remember back to when I was in college, the professor said that you should have a 10-year plan, and then you list you have goals, and then you have objectives, right? Everybody remember that? You've all played that game, right? And that's the biggest fallacy in the world. If you're present, like everybody's saying, to what is occurring for you within you, you can be and do, or we can do, or I can be and do whatever it is that I'm called to be being and doing. And it may not agree with what our families or society or other people think. When I moved to Hawaii, I had a lot of people come up to me and go, oh, you're so brave. And I was going like, I'm not brave. This is just what I'm supposed to be doing. And yeah, it was not in the code or whatever, that people thought that they had to do, but it isn't bravery when you're called within to take the next step. And this is a great phrase I got. There's a book of synchronicity from Dahmer, and I'll just end with this. And anyway, the phrase that I ended up with was the great journey faced with blithness. Did you ever think about that? I thought the great journey faced with blithness. I think that's a translation from Italian that I'm not so sure is the same as ours. But it's a wonderful way to look at it. Because if you look at Victoria said and what Janice said, and there's a great journey going on, a fantastic journey, but faced with blithness. Like, well, blithness is kind of like skipping down the lane with tulips, or skipping through the tulips, whatever that song was when we were take them through the tulips, with me. So anyway, I think that's what we take to it, blithness. And it's a great journey.
Beautiful. Something came up in what you said, Alexa, that startled me actually. And that was that I remember the transition. I remember a transition I didn't remember till this minute. And when you said how that little town, no one will ever know about your grandmother, including that little town. But I realized there's another model of pressure on us, and that is to be visible. To be visible, the larger your audience, the more difference you're making. And I have seen people give their whole lives to that. I've seen schemes that say you can build up your the people that'll buy your product, people that'll help you make a difference. And maybe we've lost, I wonder, because for me, I have been in the public eye since I was 19 years old. And it has really taken something over the last 5 years for me to shift my merit to, I don't want to be I have very specific work I want to do. This is one of them. But it isn't to make a difference to the whole world. Ripple effect, yeah, no problem. But at 70, when I was 75, which I may still be, I really can't remember. We have to look at we have to figure it out after this call. But I realized that my deepest heart was to be there for others that are moving up into their taking care of the world. And it really took something, because I've been in the public eye for 57 years. And I noticed today I have 5 classes that are private, that they're not to be populated by 1,000 of people, because there's like that library. I think these topics are valuable, and I want to explore them with people that find it valuable too. So there's this thing about promoting ourselves. That's the point I want to make. There's something of, even with Create a World, we're really having to adjust our mirrors almost, so that we're not drawn into that lure of promoting ourselves. Not because any of us in this call we're not too interested in promoting ourselves. We're very interested in promoting what we're interested in. But at the very same time, what you said, measure by money, we measure by popularity. And yet that town is better off, that little town, because their children have books that can be read. And as a psychic, as a seer, it's my feeling that going back to local community, being who we are, where we're standing, and including our global community, who we are in our global community, is the return to our merit, our caring about life. I don't know if it's our new practice ground, but it's where we could be intimate. I in Washington D.C. I had a huge population of participation, and yet there was a lack of intimacy, because I was promoting what I was preaching, you would say, but I didn't get to have the intimacy of growing up together, of growing out together, to growing in together. And that's why I've really loved this since 2014. I've loved the capacity to be community, where we just grow up and grow in and grow out together. And this is sort of our public version of that, but nobody has to belong to anything except to their own merit. But I hadn't thought about that. I'm going to think about that one for a while.
Boy, really, the whole issue with family is really coming up in sitting with the piece about merit. And I'm going back to when I was very small. I was adopted into an amazing family. And my grandparents both had come from Constantinople. Well, one from Constantinople. My grandfather was a Syrian, and they were my cheerleaders. I was adopted into this family, and both my grandparents had the same, they didn't go to college, but they were both bound and determined that their children would, both my uncles and my mom. And from the time I was very small, my grandmother said, your education is like a gold bracelet on your wrist. And I've carried that, with me. And so I know that my grandparents saw that potential in me, and they cheerleaded me all the way through school, because I struggled. And they also saw they saw a couple things that I've also carried through, and that is my innocence and my imagination and my creativity, and what a gift that was. And they saw that it was a challenge for me to be authentic in that. And they kept reminding my mother about that piece, that, that it's important to keep that innocence. And so I grew up hearing that. My mom moved into that too, always keep that innocence. There's something in that that's important. And of course, I didn't know at the time, what that was is moving through life. I've had to really, I mean, I've talked about a number of stories of where I had to kind of fight to remain the innocent in things. And I had to learn that innocence isn't ignorance. It was a huge lesson. And so I've really been pondering this week, especially in my merit with that piece, because it's the shining light. It's one of the shining lights that carries me and motivates me to continue, because I know that coming from my innocence includes, you know, like creativity and this curiosity to newly explore, you know, just like a little kid. I know that that's such a gift when showing that to others, and that it, I don't want to say gives others a permission to be that too, but in a way, you know, it is, because we've been programmed to, well, you know, you got to grow up. And I have other aspects of me that are very grown up, but I am now standing in this innocence, and how important it is to keep that alive. And then the other piece that my grandfather especially, I think I told this story, but I don't know what I said. I think I was 5. I said something really wise. And I remember kind of saying it and going, gosh, you know, I was very aware as a small child. And my grandfather said, she born that way, because he, you know, he had broken English. And I thought, you know, that's, I just felt so honored by him, for him to say that. And it was the wise crone, that aspect, coming out at age 5. And I remember telling my mom, and I've said this story too, my mom was really upset about something. My parents had a very significant dynamic, let's put it that way. They both my mom came from this family who was educated. You know, both my uncles went to school, college, and did very well. My mom as well. And then my father's family were farmers. So there was always this clash. And I just lost my train of thought. Oh, I know. So my mom was upset, and I just turned to her very, very young. I said, Mom, gather your guts together. And so all through my life, you know, there's been this thread, this wise crone, or I really resonate with the indigenous, the shamanic, indigenous medicine woman kind of culture. And I noticed that too. And I notice now how these two aspects are really, really playing into this, you know, standing in my merit. And on the one hand, just being really excited and curious. And then on the other hand, having been placed in situations, especially this past week, where I had to become the wise crone and stand in the simplicity, complexity of what matters, what really matters, and stand in that with excitement and knowing and wisdom. So it's I'm really excited to be playing with this piece in the next 7 weeks, because it's bringing up so much, such richness. So excited.
I just got to get one tagline in. When I was 18 years old, I watched Annie Mame repeatedly, because I knew when I was an old lady, I was going to be Annie Mame. And I just want you to know that I fulfill on that. I just want to put that in.
When you're talking about your family, Liz, I was reminded of mine, and mine really, they wanted me to like go to school and advance myself, in other words, because they just finished high school. They nobody before us kids went to college in our family, but they couldn't, they had such conflict in themselves with the social norms, which are actually kind of Southern stereotypes that they were raised with. And bless their hearts, they always were like, go to college and make something of yourself, basically. But then the pressure of that for them would get a little much, and they'd be back in the just get married and have kids, because that's what you're supposed to do. Women are seen and not heard. Children are seen and not heard. When they'd have people over, the men would gather and have the real conversations, and the women would be in the kitchen, quite literally. And I thought, sorry, Mom, that the conversations in the kitchen were boring, so I'd sneak out and go sit with the men. And I was not a convenient child for my parents at all. And it's interesting to think about it from their point of view. And a lot of what you said is making me think from their point of view, and how easy it was for your grandparents to say, go be who you are, go be who you are. And in whatever form that takes, because like you're saying, Tandra, it's not about becoming famous or popular or any of that. That's not it at all. It's what has your light shine. That's it. That's it. And it can be anything. I met a lady in the airport cleaning the bathrooms, and she was just singing away. And I'd had an unpleasant flight, unpleasant connections. I mean, just awful. And there she was, just singing away. And I started talking to her. And there were different circumstances where she was kind of, that was at the time the limits of her choices. I don't think it's who she would have chosen, but whatever, that was where she was. And she was just making it be the best for herself and others that she could, is what she told me, and making her world happy and good. So she's just singing away while she cleaned bathrooms with all these gnarly travelers, and it's so interesting to think about how different we all are, and our parents and those who went before us, who so many of the people who went before, who broke barriers, so many who, like my parents, they just couldn't quite get behind it. They tried, they did try, they couldn't quite make it. They just couldn't sustain it. And I don't know, I never did have the words to talk to them about it. Like, there's just too much kind of chaos around a lot of things, but I wish I had talked to them about, what is that for you to see me breaking through, or if you want to call it that, taking steps beyond where they had gotten to in their life, and what would allow them to just be appreciative of themselves for launching us kids. I wish I'd had that conversation, but I never did.
I have to tag on this one too. Sorry, I'm the insert. We're in the week of the Day of the Dead. And I was thinking about it yesterday, because we're in one of the things I'm part of, we're doing real concentration on it, our will and stuff. My mom and I had a really rough run. And I was walking down to meet Harley. She's a golden retriever that loves to play ball. So I was going down to meet Harley, and all of a sudden I can feel my mom walking with me. And she says, "Don't worry, honey. Remember, I was an author," which I had actually forgotten. "I'll make sure you get to write this book." So I cried the whole way down to the stop sign and back. And then Harley took my attention. But there is something about everything's rising in every point in the spectrum of creation in ways that was completely unexpected for me. My mom and I having a good time. It wouldn't have been the norm, not when we were physical together, but it sure was yesterday. Sure was. Lori?
I so appreciate all your sharing, because I see myself threading through all of your stories. And the pivotal thing for me is the ability that we as human beings and just humanity, we have the power to be in and stand with our own merit. And if there's a point where we don't believe that we have merit, or just, I appreciate Deb, you saying right at the beginning that it's not equated with worth, because that's kind of how I originally interpreted it. I'm like, well, we're all intrinsically worthy and we all have merit, or, so I sat with being in this and kind of went through my whole, my own life, more or less. And my parents passed very tragically when I was 13 at a pivotal point of my life. And from that point, like the first 20 years, I was just navigating like, am I worthy? Why would they leave? Because, I'm not worth anything. And I'm like, I'll just survive. I can function and I'll survive. And then as I got older, I met a community that really offered me the space to stand in my merit and be witnessed. We did it for each other. And there's beauty in that. And there's power in that. So it's almost, I feel as if there's a bridging that's happening that allows for the authenticity, the courageousness to be vulnerable, and the transparency to honor ourselves. And it took many, many years for me to love myself. And it's awesome when you can feel that. And inviting communities and people into that, knowing that they don't have to do it alone, is transformational. And allowing each of us to be in whatever degree of merit we feel we're in. I agree with Tantra. It's not about having 20 million likes on YouTube or Facebook or, all of that social media. It's about how can you be present with another to witness their story, to find the threading to bring you more deeply together in experiencing and having fun in life. And if you haven't figured it out already, I'm one of those ones that I cries all the time. But that, you know, and I think I've done it every week on camera, and I'm like, oh my God, you know, it's crazy, but it's crazy passionate because we all have the potential and the power to be united. And I'll be however I need to be to show that. So it's possible. So.
She set me up for my story. So I want to tell you, so first of all, you have to look at my jewelry. So we met, we were down at Santa Fe's thing, and we met Bruce. Bruce is a Jemez Zuni from the Jemez and Zuni Pueblo. And I had been looking for a spiral because I work in spiral dynamics for 40 years. And the minute I saw it, and let me tell you, I don't have the kind of cash of the intricate work he did here, except I happened to have that cash on me at that moment because I brought it with me because people are in cleaning my house. But I was saying to them before, and I want to say it, talk about what Lori was saying was he was beautiful, but I wanted to know the inside story. I wanted to know what he was that built these beautiful pieces of work. So what you do, because they know how to tune out our tourist talk. So they look like they're ignoring you, but the truth is they just have tuned you out. And the honor is to then touch their shoulder. And I touched his shoulder. I said, Bruce, I've been looking for this for 40 years because you start with your story. And then I got a full story. The money that we had given him for our jewelry is going to his sister who's pregnant with twins. He'll now have enough money to take her to another hospital because the hospital that she was going to be taken to couldn't really take care of the delicacy of the birth. And the people right before us had also purchased. And then he talked about how he made the jewelry at night under the moon. Of course, I'm weeping. And how if you look at it, it's not cast, it's hand done. And then I touched the person with me because the important part is to know that you are now part of a relationship with this person for them. And they're part of a relationship with you. And we have his, because we're really now interested in seeing him again because he's our friend. He provides something that connects us in an intimate and powerful way. And today, I'm going to go be with a woman and two native musicians, and she's invited me to come. I'm how she got to New Mexico. She drove 60 kilometers to do a reading with me. And I said, why are you doing a reading with me? She said, because if I drove 60 kilometers to talk to you, you'd make sure I got to New Mexico. She got to New Mexico within the month. I had nothing to do with it. That kind of beautiful world. And so today we're going to watch a potter from Zumi to do a pot in Santa Fe. And then we're going to go sit with Danielle and two musicians, and they're going to sing the book I just wrote into existence, and they're going to sing the grief out of the world. And everywhere we go is into our personal merit is really what we are committed to being with and what we're committed to being part of. It has nothing to do with the ego or a heightened sense of identity. I'm complete, Deb. And we are 1 minute, and I'd like to say something after we close, if you want to close, or if you want me to just to go with it.
Just go with it.
All right, thanks, honey.
So much has been illuminated here.
Yeah.
Just go with it. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm speaking for all of us. Our commitment is to give something a place.
Mm-hmm.
The self, and the self in every human being. whether it's a moment or a lifetime. And today, this week is the Day of the Dead, held in extremely intimate tradition in almost every indigenous tribe. And today we got to honor that by talking about our ancestors and talking about honoring those that got us here and their vulnerability and their intensity, my mother, and in their confusion and in their commitment. So I just want to take this moment for all of us to thank you for being with us, and remember, we come from a long line of people being present to life and opening up to life just like us. And we're just carrying it on. Namaste.